my philosophy has just always been like everybody belongs, everybody is allowed to be in here until you start trying to either you're intentionally or unintentionally pushing people away. You know, if you are particularly violent and everybody's like, well, I don't want anything to do with this, so I'm not going to another FGC event again because this guy like raged and like threw a chair or something like that. Like you are actively doing something to prevent people from wanting to keep coming and enjoy themselves. You know, if you are like, hey, obviously this is a topical thing and I you know, we don't have to get into it, but like if someone's like, women don't belong in gaming, like you're literally trying to prevent people from coming and enjoying the scene. And so like if you are someone actively trying to trying to prevent people from coming into the scene and having a good time, you are basically trying to exclude people first.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so, you know, that's why you should be excluded.
Because I think the way to deliver the experience that you had to those who haven't experienced yet is very difficult because it'll be my forever homework. And also I guess you guys can also think about it. You guys don't necessarily have to provide a solution because it's kind of philosophical as well, because the idea of where open tournaments, it's very welcoming thing to the FGC, where everybody can enter. You can, you know, rub shoulders with, like, you can probably get matched up with Daigo or Tokido, right? It's what an honor sometimes. People would think, if you're gonna lose, let's lose to Daigo, like, you know, like that kind of thing, right? At the same time, I see comments and posts like, oh, I'm not even good enough to enter, or I don't want to go to an event where a lot of people gonna see me get bodied. That alongside with when we always say, oh, you know, come to your locals or at least go to Evo once in your life. People who experienced it know how fun and engaging and very enlightening it is. Like, you know, people like us, that most of the time it is a positive experience if you liked fighting games in general. But it's so hard for them to, you know, cross that bridge and for us to even pull them into an offline event for the first time when these obstacles exist. Because we understand, yes, losing it can be hurtful. It can be, you don't want to get embarrassed. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the homework that I always have that I can never lay a proper answer to. And I kind of sometimes write like a wall of text. And then I'm like, oh man, this might not be the right way, because some people will never agree to what I say by just saying come and enjoy, because if they have the fear of, man, I don't want to lose, I don't want to you know, be embarrassed in front of people, that's always going to be that mental obstacle.
I think the thing that you know, we're running into is, this is like, you know, back at the very beginning of all this, when tournaments and, you know, FGC was in its infancy, it was very much about like the gameplay and playing and the game FAQs and it was very much like there was like a competitive aspect to it. But then like
basically like, if you heard about VIA, you want to beat VIA, you know?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that was really all their that was most of it at the time. But nowadays, because of media, there's like you know, there's like content creators, there's you know, there's cosplayers, there are people doing like, you know, amazing stuff in like the lore realm with fighting games, and you know, and these are all things like, you know, it just enhances like everything, right? And you know, I talked to Pat Miller, like even, you know, like, you know, popcorn vendors, and like there are people who are like, you know, there's just like there's a bigger parts of the FGC now, right? And I guess in a certain sense, I mean, it's cool that you're having all these kind of different talents and people doing different things that are coming in. But then there's also the core of it, which is the competitive aspect, right? And this is something that I asked VIA last week was, you know, I guess like if you were to see like an extreme form of this, like let's say like 100 years from now in the FGC, like could it possibly be where the competitive side is just something that happens in the very tiny corner of Evo that nobody really watches or cares about, and then it's just all like
having fun.
funny like influencers that come and then they do some funny stuff, and it's like, oh, it's that guy, and then like is there a risk for anything like that to happen? If it does, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? And would anything like that even happen? And if it does, then what would be the thing that triggers that? Right?
I welcome the coexisting of it, but yeah, I wonder if the power struggle will ever be one-sided ever, whether it's back to the competitive only or the fun only.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on this, James.
I mean, one of the things that I've always told a story back, like I said, before I was doing commentary, I was kind of part of the Evo staff. Really, honestly, like if you really wanted to name a number 5 person on the Evo staff, that would probably have been Chris Lee. You guys know Chris Lee at all? He's the big Asian guy that's always on the stage and like kicking people, and being like a the bouncer essentially, the enforcer. But I mean, he also has like really strong business acumen and all this stuff like that. So he was really very valuable in terms of like, helping make decisions and stuff like that. And I remember standing with Tom, I think it was Tom, Tony, and Chris, and the 4 of us were standing there at one of the early Evos before 09, and someone came up to us and they're like, hey man, I saved all my money to come to Evo. I'm so happy to be here. Where can I buy all the stuff? And we were like, because there was no stuff to buy.
The merch.
Like there was literally nothing to buy. And that was kind of the turning point, because Tom and Tony had always been like, it's tournament first. Like even the first years we were streaming, they were like, we'll never stop the tournament for the stream. The tournament comes first. But then you start to realize that, times change and your audience changes. Like people are coming literally to like have the ultimate fighting game experience, and they want to buy things and all this stuff. And so, the cool thing about it is like most of the merch there is going to be, like Artist Alley kind of stuff. And like, I will always be supportive of like
I spend a lot of money on that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, for me, in my opinion, it is the correct thing to go in the direction of becoming more of a convention than just a tournament, right? Because a lot of people there are going to go 0-2, and again, you shouldn't feel bad about it. Like literally,
thousands of people do.
If you have 10,000 people,
yeah.
If you have 10,000 people in a tournament, right? 10,000 entrants. 2,500 are going 0-2, and another 2,500 are going 1-2. So like literally 50% of the players are not going to do better than 1-2. So like you can't even feel bad for losing at a tournament. And whenever people ask me like, why should I go? I'm bad, like whatever, and all this stuff. And the important thing is, and this is another kind of one of the things, like I get on these like philosophy soapbox kicks and stuff, and one of my latest ones has really been that fighting games are meant to be a social genre. Like even though it's one-on-one, but if Street Fighter 2 came out today, it wouldn't have worked as well, right? Even if there wasn't other games for competition, because literally playing at home by yourself is kind of not fun, And like being at arcades, even if there was somebody that you weren't actually a friend with, you'll lose to like Vi and you'll be like, but then you see Vi kill everybody else and you're like, well, okay, he's actually good. Like a lot of times when you lose the people on ranked, you're like, that guy's not even good, and stuff. And then sometimes you'll jump off the machine and some person that's just goes to the arcade with you all the time that you've never spoken to will just be like, hey, you do realize that you jump every time he backdashes, right? And you'll just be like, do I? And so like, it's a very social genre in my opinion. And I think the way that we're playing it these days is actually incorrect, being this ranked kind of online thing. But that's why when people say to me like, why should I go to this tournament if I'm just going to go 0-2? Why should I go to my local? And my response to them is always, don't care about your results. That's not why you should be going to the event. You're going there to soak in the environment, to sit in a audience where everybody is cheering for the same thing that you're cheering for when that never happens, because like a lot of times you want to be like, yo, dude, did you see that Daigo match? And people are looking, they're like, what are you even talking about? But like now you have the opportunity to go to this event where like 1,000 people are in the crowd and they are all screaming for the same things you are. I tell people, like, when you experience that for the first time, it is transformative. Like you will not feel that it will change your life. Like when you go to Evo and everybody's cheering at the same time.
Yeah, it did for me.
Like and what you're trying to do there is you're trying to soak in the environment, and really everybody says it. Like when they go to their first offline event, they're like, wow, FGC is really friendly and nice. It's not at all like it is on the internet, you know? And it's like, yeah. And you know, it's also why, like, as a personality in the FGC, I make it a point at Evos and stuff like that to walk around, like during my breaks. I just walk around because I want to give people the opportunity to be like, oh my gosh, hey, James, I can I get a picture or whatever? It's not to feed my own ego or anything like that, but it's like I want to be that representative that, you know, when you see a lot of people have said to me, like, yeah, I met you at my first Evo, you stopped and you talked to me, and like I told you my handle, and you're like, oh, you're on my stream. You even gave me a hug, and like I'll never forget that, you know, kind of things. And, you know, that's what I'm trying to foster. You know, a lot of the times I want people to come in and see that the FGC is not what you see online, you know, because again, like most people are really friendly, most people are really nice and stuff. And you, so when you go to an event, like, it's not to like, and it sounds bad, right? Because a lot of people are like, no, these tournaments should only be about the competition, like, you know, but like I said, 50% of the players are going to go worse than what, like they're not even going to go even. They're not even going to go 2 and 2. To me, it's really important that you make sure that they have other stuff to do and to enjoy it, but also keep it fighting game themed so that they can soak it in and stuff, you know? And so like they can check out the booths, they can, you know, oh, hey, I'm going to the Capcom booth and standing in line. I get to try out 2XKO, you know, I get to see where the fighting game community might be going in the future and stuff. And it's very important for that. The fear that the tournament will become the side thing, right? The side thing. It's a very realistic fear, okay? Like I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, that'll never happen, whatever, you know, what are you paranoid? Like anything can happen, and in my opinion, that's a very realistic thing. The only thing that prevents that from happening is, you know, having the right people being the TOs and stuff, right? Because the beautiful thing about the fighting game community, and I talk about this a lot because it is my absolute favorite thing about the fighting community, is that, you know, we have a history. The history of the FGC is completely, God, I don't want to use this word because that sounds weird. I was gonna say classless, but that doesn't sound right. There is
it's
no
egalitarian.
Like, yes, there's no class brackets that prevented you from playing.
Yeah.
You walked into an arcade, you put in 25 cents, and you played. Like, nobody ever turned you away. And so, you know, that's one of my favorite things about the FGC. And, you know, because a lot of the TOs who are in charge right now grew up in that environment, like a Valle, like even Jabali, or like, you know, like Shin Blanco when he was doing Final Round and stuff like that, you know, we try to preserve that. And that is the idea of everybody is, you know, on an equal playing field when you first show up to a tournament. That's why we like the open bracket stuff. And that's why we like having that one person be from out of nowhere, like, who is this guy? They made top 8, you know, kind of thing. And so, like, as long as a lot of those guys are in charge, you know, we can preserve that. And the tournament will always be like, still be the main focus, right? Even as Evo is basically a fighting game convention, the tournament is still the main focus, right? Like when you promote Evo, it's not like, hey, let's show all the footage of the floor, right? Like you promote it by like, look at this crazy match, look at this crazy match. So like it's still, still about the games. And that's because the people in charge, I mean, even though, like Rick is in charge of Evo right now, even though he didn't really grow up as much in the fighting game arcade era, but he's influenced by like Keats, for example, right? So Keats, came from that era. And so, the mentality that Keats had when he was running UFGT, he basically passed it on to Rick, and that's why Rick kind of took it over and turned it into Combo Breaker. But, you have the right people passing down the mentality correctly so that a lot of people still understand the idea of you put your quarter up, you can play. And that's kind of what we want to keep with the FGC. It is tough because Evo is expensive, so it is going to cost a lot more money. So it's not as much of the, like anybody can, regardless of your, economic state, that you can participate. It is hard now because, going to these things are so expensive. But as long as a lot of that old school mentality stays, it will remain as a big tournament. The risk is if some entity that doesn't have any of that knowledge ends up taking over a lot of the FGC. And this is why, like,